Hello, friends, and welcome to our first episode of Sunday Brunch at the KannaTable, a social media show that seeks to plant seeds of possibilities in the minds of you, our guest. Our table seeks to be a bridge of communication in an effort to learn what science is discovering about the medicinal properties of cannabis.
Hello, I'm Leanne, and like Loeli, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface of cannabis research and study. We're hoping that you will join us on our cannabis journey of discovering, learning, and growth. Along the way, we'd like to introduce to you individuals who have discovered firsthand what this misunderstood plant can potentially do to improve the quality of life for so many.
So, pull up a chair, grab your favorite mug of coffee or tea, and join us for Sunday Brunch at the KannaTable. All right, guys, welcome. And now we are here to introduce the most important person of the day, our Chef Ian Martin.
Wow.
Yes. Very important because I'm hungry and I'm ready to eat. So, Chef Ian Martin is here with us today from Misha's Kind Foods, which also produces amazing dairy-free cheeses. Cashew and almond blend. You want to make sure you go and pick them up at any of most locations. Well, we have the farmers markets and we also have the shops. So you can find us at Air One and where else?
Yep, Air One, Mother's Markets, but everything is on the website or IG, so you can find out where we are.
Misha's Kind Foods, exactly. So definitely look them up. Now, can you share with us today what we're going to be eating?
Well, today we are going to have a fully plant-based brunch.
Yes.
It's going to be French toast that is accompanied with sauteed plantains, which I know from the Rico, we are from Caribbean folks.
Yes,
I'm going to make an orange, rum, and a sauce with allspice.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I'm going.
Yeah, you're in for a treat, darling. Yeah, you're in for a treat.
Also plant-based bacon, which is very tasty.
Oh, nice.
That I also season to kind of just boost it a little bit. And finally, we are going to have an infused beverage, which is like a mint and apple drink.
What are we using these beautiful berries for then?
Oh, well, these berries are for the dessert, which is another infused dessert. It's going to be a trifle, but we're going to get there.
Yeah. We are, and today our infused dishes are being prepared with our Tikun tinctures. Today we're using the Midnight 1-to-1, and we're really looking forward to this. Tikun has some of the cleanest cannabis products that you're going to find out on the market, and truly the best tested that's out there as well. They have plenty of studies that back up their products, and so definitely worth checking out. But I'm looking forward to this, so let's get this started. And in the meantime, I'm going to go get Dr. Dan and go get our friend Eric while my friend steals a berry, and we're going to get ourselves ready to get this brunch going.
Yes.
All right, guys, so here we are. We're ready to start our trifle, our berry trifle that we're going to have for our dessert today, and it's going to be an infused trifle too. We had Chef infuse our cake for it. So have you guys had a trifle before?
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, see, now did you think that you were coming to actually cook? Because that's what's important. That you know this is an actual active event. So we did use 2 milliliters, I believe, of tincture in our cake. So this is basically letting you guys know that it's really simple for you to medicate at home, microdosing. Using a tincture, you could put it in any of your foods, and that way you're basically medicating without smoking, right? That's probably, now Dr. Den, you would recommend that is like one of the best ways to medicate, right?
Absolutely. If you're using just a tincture without the food, you can put it under your tongue and it's absorbed very quickly in about 15-20 minutes. If you put it in the food, it has to go through the digestive system first, so that takes about 45 minutes to an hour, sometimes a little bit longer to take effect.
Right. So, but it's, you got to say, I mean, for anybody who doesn't want to smoke, it's the best way to go.
It is. It's a very healthy way to take the medication.
Yeah. Right. All right. So we got our cups. Everybody grab your cup. And we're gonna start off with a layer of cake. So get yourself a layer of cake. I'm gonna cut these strawberries up a little bit here. And now, Eric,
Yes.
can you tell me a little bit about what's going on with you guys right now, and what's been happening with the Veterans Coalition right now?
So the Veterans Cannabis Coalition has been working on, several different initiatives to try to address a lot of the issues that we've encountered in the cannabis community, both nationally and in California.
So you've been working with a lot of companies now then with SB 34.
Yeah, so our main partner in the program right now is Cannabis Works down in Santa Ana, which also carries Tikun Ulam products, and Tikun Ulam has also been one of the companies donating products to medical cannabis patients. We're specifically working on to address needs in the veteran community, but ultimately, the issues that veterans deal with, especially patients in California, that they deal with issues like affordability and accessibility, those apply to pretty much all patients in the state, right? With legalization, I think we've lost a lot of the certainly the medicinal aspects of what existed under Prop 215 in the past.
Right.
But as well, there's been a lot of patient, let's call them guardrails that have been removed, right? Co-ops and caregiver proxy growing and all these other sort of components that exist under Prop 215 are no longer there, and now patients are stuck basically paying a pretty hefty premium to buy legal cannabis, and that's not really sustainable for almost any of them.
Correct.
We based off of some math coming out of how the Canadian Department of Veterans Affairs, they reimburse veterans in Canada who purchase cannabis through the legal Canadian market.
Okay.
And they've been doing that since Canada legalized medicinal cannabis back in 2001.
Wow.
Actually, I'm not sure if the program existed since then, but Canada has had medical cannabis since then.
Wow.
And based on what, their numbers essentially, the average cannabis patient, the average veteran cannabis patient, I should say, consumed a little less than 2 pounds a year, or a little more than 2 grams of dried flower, equivalent a day.
Right.
Now, if you were to purchase that, in Canada, that would be about $6,500. If you were to purchase that in California, that's $10,000 easily, right? And that's mid-grade, pretty reasonably priced flower. That you're still going to look at coming out $10,000 a year out of pocket. And that's not sustainable.
No.
For patients especially, who already
They've
often
already
deal
had
with
medical bills coming in.
Right. And this is, there's no insurance, obviously, that will pay for cannabis.
Right.
And that's also, for legal cannabis companies, they should be concerned because that's a big driver into the illicit market, right? Affordability and price consciousness is one of the top issues that patients, are thinking of.
Correct.
I think that's one of the things that is so frustrating as a doctor is dealing with patients and finding a solution that works for them, but then they can't afford it.
Exactly.
So they know that there's a solution and they don't have access to it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's very frustrating for so many of the patients that come into Shangri-La because that's what they want. They want a good price point, but they also want something they know works well because it's been researched and studied.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and in all honesty, essentially that was the reason I became a patient, because of the fact that I was having Synvis shots put in my knee, and after having 2 of them, the insurance company said you can't have any more, and they were $15,000 each. I was like, I can't pay $15,000 for a shot, and very painful. And it was working. It definitely was helping me reduce the amount of pain medication I had to take, but still, it was
Not sustainable.
not at all.
And veterans are one of the few categories of people in this country who often actually have access to, I'd say, healthcare that's subsidized or paid for completely by the federal government. They're the only population in this country that does that. The federal government provides direct healthcare to veterans through the Department of Veterans Affairs, and they have a both legal and moral obligation to provide the best care possible.
Yes.
Now, when we look at the community and we see 15 years of, unmitigated suicide, that, despite billions of dollars and lots of very smart people coming up with very, I think sometimes needed interventions like the Veteran Health, Crisis Line and other tools to try to, people who are in crisis to try to shift them away from potentially, dying by
Because do you
suicide.
have that here still, like a lot of your veterans coming back have the high rates of
Yes,
suicide,
yes,
the
yes.
high rates of PTSD that are just not addressed.
22 suicides a day by veterans, I think.
Right, and
Oh,
that's
my God.
and the VA basically estimates anywhere between 20 to 22, and the number sort of fluctuates kind of how you slice it. But what we understand is that this is definitely undercounted
Yes.
because it doesn't also take into account the overdoses. One of the things that U.S. veterans especially struggle with is that the drugs they get from the Department of Veterans Affairs and private health, they both kind of follow the same models of how they prescribe pharmaceuticals. You know, as a veteran, if I'm coming in with PTSD and chronic pain and inability to sleep, right, they're giving me 3+, 4+, 5+ drugs to manage each individual symptom.
All that have side effects and
expressing,
have
right.
drug interactions with each other.
And while there might be evidence to support giving an individual one drug for a
Correct.
specific condition, there is no evidence to support giving all these drugs in combination
the
for
kaleidoscope
very
of it.
complex conditions, right? PTSD has both like physical and mental components to it.
Correct.
It expresses itself in both of those ways, and that's why giving someone Zoloft, or Paxil, which are the only two approved medications for the treatment of PTSD, is so insufficient. Right?
Okay.
Because it's like how is an antidepressant really going to address all of the mental, physiological issues that arise with PTSD while not contributing in a harmful way by adding new side effects?
Adding to the side of
Yeah. I don't know. I tell you, it's an amazing thing. I think it's something that the country has to wake up to. It's like we cannot, especially our veterans, we can no longer just ignore the problem and pretend it's not there.
It's
time
hard to
address
say
it.
that we're not failing our veterans.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, and always use this as a lens. It's like veterans are not unique, right? PTSD is not unique to the veteran population.
No.
Chronic pain, depression, anxiety, infectious disease, COPD, name it, right?
Yeah.
Veterans suffer from the same health, medical conditions that every other American suffers from. But what we have in the veteran community is a pretty wide cross-section of people who are using federal health care and are basically, and so we know more about veteran health than we do a lot, in some cases about more broadly public health.
Yeah.
But what we know is that if you're not, whether you're a veteran or not, if you have these conditions and you're being treated with these pharmaceuticals, they're not, more than likely, not going to be doing much good for you.
No, and as you said, maybe compounding some of the other issues that might come along with the side effects.
Well, I tell you, I think we got a lot of stuff to talk about, but our trifles are done.
Wait, are they?
Are they? Did you
Are we supposed to
finish
top
mine?
them with cream?
Do you want a little bit more? But
I
I
just
think
want extra
we're
cream.
good. So we should be ready to get ourselves out to eat.
All
Yeah.
right.
I'm hungry. All right, let's go. All right, chef. So we have our last infused dish before we're ready to start our brunch, which I'm starving already. Can you tell us a little bit about our drink?
Absolutely. So this is fresh pressed apples, along with blended mint, a touch of lemon, and some pomegranate seeds just for presentation, make it look nice. And of course we have our tincture.
Yes, our Tikun tincture, which we are featuring today. Today we're putting Alaska, which is the sativa strain that Tikun puts out right now with their tinctures, one of their strains anyway. So we're looking forward to this and looking forward to eating. So with that, I say, my friends, cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. L'chaim. Let's have some. I just wanted to see if we can talk a little bit more about what Tikun is doing right now, or the studies especially, because I mean, the one thing that I love most about Tikun is the fact that they essentially leading the world when it comes to cannabis studies and medical studies at that. So could you tell us a little bit about what their studies have actually come to find with the PTSD in our veterans?
Sure, because we come out of Israel, it's a much more relaxed regulatory environment there, and they're more progressive in terms of their attitudes towards cannabis and toward medicine, and that's allowed them to do research there that we can't do here because cannabis is Schedule 1 and has laws against it. So there are a couple of studies that have been done in Israel with Tikun products, and they've looked at patients with PTSD, specifically looking at rage attacks, which is common, difficulty with irritability and emotional control, and patients went from. Let me back up. And say also that Israel is a particularly good environment for studying PTSD because it's a compulsory military service. So a majority of Israelis are veterans and have been through traumatic experiences, and PTSD is quite common.
So they start at what age is it they have to go, do you know?
I think it's 18, something
2-year
around 18.
compulsory military service.
At 18.
Wow, that's a young age.
And that's a very young age, so I mean, that's hard not to be traumatized.
Right. And so what they found was these rage attacks, patients went from before using cannabis, experiencing rage attacks 3 or 4 times a week or sometimes on a daily basis, and then the majority of patients go down to experiencing them never or on a rarely. And then the same has basically been true for aversive memories. So these are recollections of traumatic events that are particularly disturbing, and those have gone down from daily or 3 or 4 times a week down to rarely. And so it's made a big difference in the lives of people, and their overall quality of life is much better. They're able to hold a job, they're able to drive a car, they're able to do things that they weren't able to do beforehand. And so cannabis has really made a big difference there, and Tikun strains, a variety of Tikun strains have been used, but they found that they've also benefited in terms of sleep. A lot of times veterans with PTSD will have nightmares and have very poor sleep, and cannabis can be helpful in that regard as well.
That's something that I've recently found out more about, primarily because I also have a father who's a Vietnam veteran, and in his early 70s, and I'm finding out that I guess a lot of veterans around that age are starting to experience a great deal of nightmares, where they've lived a very normal life, and all of a sudden now, because they're retired or just relaxed, all of a sudden these nightmares are coming back. So it's very common for them now too.
It is, and the endocannabinoid system tapers off a bit as we get older, and so our body's own ability to manufacture our own cannabinoids like anandamide and 2-AG goes down, and so we don't have the ability to regulate sleep in the same way, and so supplementing their endocannabinoid system with phytocannabinoids from the plant really makes a lot of sense for older adults. And it's kind of ironic that older adults who could benefit the most in many ways from the use of cannabis often suffer from the most stigma and are less likely to use cannabis. I don't know if you see that in the
Yeah, well, I literally have
dispensary.
people coming in disguise. So, yeah, they will have the dark sunnies on, they will have the hats on, and it's their first time in the dispensary, a lot of people, and they are frightened to come in. So if we can provide an environment where people feel comfortable coming in, they know they're going to get good advice from the bud tenders or the people who are helping them, I think we'll see more and more people coming in.
And I think that for older adults in particular, it makes a lot of sense to get a consultation with a physician, because that way they're not going to be trial and error. They're going to be set on a course that should give them a good result, or at least give them a good place to start from. So I think
consultation with a physician can be really helpful for older adults in particular.
Do you find that many doctors are open to cannabis consultations, or are they in a sticky position being federally licensed, or is there something that stops them as well?
In my personal experience, when I first discovered cannabis as medicine, I used it for back pain, and I was amazed. It worked as well as an opiate, but without any of the side effects of the opiates, and I had this kind of aha phenomenon where I was like, oh my God, this is medicine. This is really medicine. And then I thought, all these patients that I'm seeing in the emergency department, I'm an emergency physician, have worked at the trauma center in Oakland for 14 years, and I saw all these patients in the emergency department that we would give opiates to or give other medicines to, where cannabis could work as well or better without any of the side effects. And it took me 2 years before I wrote my first medical recommendation. I would talk to patients about it and recommend, well, why don't you look in the back of this, magazine and find a doctor who will give you a recommendation. And now since then I've done about 15,000 recommendations, and patients benefit a lot from a bit of guidance.
Yes, they do. Now, so with our veterans though, how are you guys finding a lot of resistance with the VA being able to come in and step into also recommending?
Yeah, so about a third of veterans use the VA as their primary source for healthcare, which is good, because the VA ends up being, for a lot of veterans, the last line of defense essentially that they have, right? So because the way healthcare is provided in our country, right, you have to sort of make it up from where you can, whether it's your employer or Medicare or Medicaid, depending on your age or your financial situation. So the VA is definitely a lifeline for a lot of vets, but because they're a federal agency, they are under federal law, and they are institutionally resistant to the idea of, I think, even investigating cannabis, which goes beyond just like being unable to prescribe. Like we're not asking for that, right? There is no way for a VA doctor to prescribe cannabis.
But you're asking for research, aren't
But we're
you?
asking for research, right? And even something like that, we find a lot of resistance, even in pushing for non-phytocannabinoid research. So, for example, last year we were in a private roundtable, and we were explicitly discussing cannabis research, with members of Congress, and we put forward that, if VA doesn't want to do plant-based cannabis research, we have 2 FDA-approved cannabinoid drugs that are already available: dronabinol, also Marinol, which is synthetic THC, and Epidiolex, which is now unscheduled. But we know that Department of Defense doctors are prescribing dronabinol off-label for pain to active duty military members, right? So there's a huge disconnect right now in the way that the federal government is approaching cannabis. It says it has no medical value, except that it recognizes that the 2 major the workhorses of the cannabinoid or of the cannabis plant, THC and CBD, they both recognize they have medical value. Now, most private companies actually don't like doing medical research by themselves, right? Like they really like to have the federal government funding part of it, if not all of it. So, in that interim period between when we have legal companies that are trying, state legal companies that are trying to get their feet and trying, just entering now the more medicinal pharmaceutical focus, and these traditional pharmaceutical companies, there's still a lot of ground to cover, right? And I think until legalization, you're really not going to see participation, big corporate participation, prior to that. But the VA and everything and private health, they're kind of indistinguishable in the sense that they both use the same drugs, the same models of prescribing, and they both have the same tendency to try to match a drug to a condition, right?
Yeah.
So when vets who almost always come in with multiple conditions, end up coming out with multiple, pharmaceuticals, you find yourself on that path of taking drugs that might not actually work for you, but you feel compelled to because you're told you've been prescribed. And what you don't quite grasp, especially with drugs like antidepressants or benzodiazepines, is that there is a withdrawal aspect that comes along with it, and that you can't take those drugs for long periods of time and not have not just the normal course of side effects, but significant issues when you try to get off of them. In terms of benzodiazepines, Xanax, Valium, Klonopin, very popular, right? They're Schedule II drugs, and they are one of the only drugs that require medical supervision if you have a use disorder with it, because they can cause seizures if you were just to stop taking benzos, cold turkey, depending on how severe, how advanced your use disorder is. And that's the world that veterans live in.
And if you take too much, benzodiazepines are just like opiates. They'll stop your breathing.
Right.
And people die from an overdose. And it's not difficult to have an unintentional overdose if, say, you've been off of your benzodiazepine or off of your opiate, and then you go back to taking the same dose that you were used to using. All that tolerance that's built up is gone, and you'll stop breathing.
Right.
And Dr. Dan brings up, I think, an even bigger point, right? When people talk about veteran suicide, they rarely talk about veteran overdose. We know that that's a big issue. There's such a focus on opioids being like this major driver of overdoses, but in reality, it's polysubstance. It's the combination of all these things together. So very few people ever overdose just on a single opioid. It's like multiple opioids, like heroin and fentanyl, or it's opioids and benzodiazepines, or it's
alcohol,
opioids and alcohol, or alcohol and benzos, or all of these drugs, opioids, benzodiazepines, alcohol, they're all central nervous system depressants. So opioid overdoses cause respiratory depression, which causes essentially suffocation.
Stress though,
It is,
the body, as well as all the as you said, the drama it's caused from to begin with, while you've started, let alone this is, wow.
And yet, to this day, have you found anyone who's had a reaction anywhere near close to that with cannabis?
No.
It's just not possible because there aren't cannabinoid receptors in those areas of the brainstem that regulate breathing and circulation. So they've tried giving huge amounts that you would never give to a human being that you couldn't even consume in any way.
No realistic setting.
Right.
Yeah.
And they've given those to monkeys and to dogs and to other animals, and they've never been able to find
The most they do is go to sleep and wake up and ask for Doritos.
they've never
More
been able to
bananas.
find a lethal dose.
And this is the attempt that they've made to try to prove what they've told us for the last, since 1937, right? That this is a harmful substance, this is dangerous. And this is what they've gotten to show for it, and it's not very convincing. Let's just put it that way. And
One thing I would say though is cannabis is not without side effects.
Sure.
Correct.
And
there are risks.
And it's important to use it properly. And I think particularly back to our discussion of older adults, these are people who are at increased risk for side effects. And just an example, I know you're familiar with this, but THC is biphasic. It's a drug that has a different effect at a low dose than it does at a high dose. At a high dose, you're actually likely to increase anxiety and can cause panic attacks and paranoia compared to microdosing or using a lower dose where it actually can be very helpful for anxiety.
And the FDA and modern medical science loves single molecules, right? They really like to isolate it down, say this molecule does X, Y, or Z, and that's just not really. I mean, we have to do that with cannabis. I don't really think there's an alternative necessarily. We have to show what these do individually, but the goal obviously should be to produce as close to medicine, as close to medicine. I mean, obviously, let research guide it. I mean, if there's some research that says maybe a couple isolated cannabinoids can really do wonders for a certain condition, great. Despite the lack of formal research, we have a pretty good intuitive / lived experience understanding of cannabis, based on the experiences of millions of patients who have told us exactly all the things
Over millennia,
right? Who have told us in very clear terms exactly what this does for them
and how it benefits
them
if it used correctly.
Right.
There's records of cannabis being used for PTSD in soldiers 500 years in the past in India.
Wow.
And documented by a Portuguese physician named Cristobal Acosta, and describes a really good distinguishing between patients who had PTSD and weren't able to sleep in particular, to those who are able to sleep without nightmares and able to go on and conduct normal lives.
Okay, well,
Pretty
if he's
fascinating.
doing that, how many hundreds of years ago, can we please figure out?
Can we move this ahead a little?
We haven't moved very
if that is
far.
happening,
And speaking on that, I mean, what can we do? I mean,
Yeah, how can we
Luckily,
get
we
it
have
going?
more states that are now
Sure.
jumping on board and getting and seeing. I mean, recently I saw, what was it, as high as like 69% of Americans are
Yeah.
in favor of.
This is something that they're not comfortable with, that they would prefer to find some, I don't know, like middle path, I think,
Middle ground.
you know,
Right,
to
both
try to like
sides.
make everybody happy, right? And, you know, the district attorneys and and our criminal justice system in general, right? This is pulling a huge pillar out of their ability to do mass incarceration, right? Now, that's certainly, beyond pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of money in private corrections, right? In drug treatment programs, especially like coerced drug treatment programs. And courts love to send people to drug treatment for cannabis.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is that voting does work.
Yes.
And the fact is that it is an election season. And so, I mean, if we want to put our money where our mouth is, and, the state of the country right now is that it's time for change, then it's time to put our money where our mouth is, and it's time to implement those changes. And we need to vote in people who are going to make those changes.
But I think it's on every voter, because right now there is not like a cannabis voter.
Well, that's why I think we need to start educating all levels on the cannabis field. And I think it is incredibly important to start with the people who are going to be affected the most, whether it's their elder population or veteran population. But there's obviously people who are hurting, and this might possibly,
It could save a lot of lives.
we have seen it work. And yeah, let's try and make it happen.
Definitely. Well, I can't thank you guys enough for coming.
Of course, thank you so much for having us, and this food has been absolutely
Yeah.
fantastic.
Thank you, Chef.
We've been eating it as we go along.
Yeah.
But the thing that I really like about Tikun is that these are products that you can trust
Yes.
because they've been studied. There have been more studies done on Tikun products than any other products in the world, and so when you have an older adult, when you have a new user, when you have someone who wants to not make a mistake, going with something that's been proven to be effective is really crucial, and that's where Tikun comes in, is being able to do the scientific research.
Absolutely. I've always referred to them as kind of medical grade cannabis. I
Yes.
mean, having been at the grow facility and seen it's literally, you can eat off the floor there, I would trust it with anything. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are extremely thankful to Tikun for loaning us Dr. Dan to come on, and hopefully you'll come back and visit us again, and we'll chat a
Absolutely.
little bit more. And then, Eric, please tell us, what can we do to help out the Veterans Cannabis Coalition?
Sure, we have a couple regular call to action campaigns that are ongoing. So, if you're talking about voting, one of the best ways to participate beyond voting is to just contact your member of Congress about a specific issue and let them know that you care about it. Because it's one of those things where they hear from so few people that anyone who steps up and makes their voice heard, that person probably represents 1,000 or maybe even 10,000 voters, on a particular issue. So, an easy way to participate is we have a call to action campaign. People can either go to Veterans Cannacoalition, Veterans CANNA coalition.org, or text VCC, that's Victor Charlie Charlie, to 52886, and text that code to that number. You'll get a link that you can follow to a couple pre-made cannabis campaigns that we have going on right now. One is in support of the MORE Act, which is a federal piece of legislation that would legalize cannabis in addition to a lot of other very positive things, as well as calling on Congress to basically reach out and hear from more veterans on this specific issue.
Very good, very good. And then also, though, we also want to thank Chef Ian Martin for coming and cooking us this lovely, delicious brunch. And you can pick up your own Misha's cheeses, by the way.
They were excellent, yes, thank you.
Phenomenal. At most farmers markets we have out here on the west side, we have Brentwood and
Are you headed to Beverly Hills or no?
Yeah, we are in Beverly Hills.
Ah,
but
well,
actually,
now.
we're going to be shipping soon, so if
Very
people just
good. But
hit the website, they'll.
the website, correct, which
We'll
is
put it out. MishasKindFoods.com.
MishasKindFoods.com. Yes, and we hope that you all will join us again.
Of course,
for more.
love to.
Your IG handles and your Facebook pages, do you have?
Yes, so it's the same. It's at Veterans Cannacoalition for both Facebook and Instagram.
Perfect. And Dr.
And
Dan?
at Tikun CA.
At Tikun CA. All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I've learned so much.
That was a beautiful brunch, but I'd like to introduce you now, the Faces of Cannabis, with the beautiful Brianna Weatherspoon.
Hey everyone! Hope everyone's having a fantastic day. My name is Brianna Weatherspoon, aka Busy Bee, and I'm so thankful and excited to be here with everyone. For those of you who are following, we appreciate you joining us and supporting the KannaTable, and we really look forward to taking this journey with you all. I also want to say, if you've made it this far, congratulations! You are a part of the growing cannabis community that knows the amazing benefits and properties of cannabis and how truly game-changing it can be. We're in such an amazing time right now, and I know I'm personally looking forward to cannabis getting the recognition it truly deserves. Although legalization of cannabis has ramped up across the nation, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done when it comes to clinical trials and testing and collecting data for medical conditions, illnesses, special needs, and etc. So how have we been spreading the word about cannabis? Word of mouth. This Faces of Cannabis segment is meant for us to share our personal cannabis stories with each other and why cannabis should be considered as an option for a better quality of life. We encourage you to share this segment and show with a family member or a friend who may be facing an ailment or suffering from mental health issues. It may just open their mind up to other possibilities and options to include in his and her everyday life. Kicking off Faces of Cannabis is Adrian Gomez from Menifee, California, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who suffers from PTSD and utilizes plant medicine to manage his symptoms.
Hello, Adrian Gomez. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing very, very well. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us today. Let's go ahead and get started with the basics. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name's Adrian Gomez. I'm originally from Dumas, Texas, small town in the out there in the Texas Panhandle. Came out to California 2 days after I graduated high school. Attended Marine Corps boot camp. Did 20 years. Retired, or was fortunate enough to retire in 2016, and just been out here in Southern California. You know, I guess living the life, as they say.
Living the California life. Okay, no, I definitely I understand that. What would you say to those people who, about cannabis and why it seriously needs to be considered for PTSD management?
Because it works, it works. It's not a synthetic. There's a lot of products that are out there that are organic. It's something that I look towards. Even toward when you're looking at flower, but it's natural. It works, and there's probably thousands of us, across the U.S. that can attest to it. Only a few of us are coming out, or a handful are coming out and speaking about it. But it's improved the quality of life for myself. It's improved relationships with family members. It's improved my mental health. And all of us veterans, because that's my network, that's who I hang out around and deal with. We've all found the benefits of it. We've all seen the changes that we've been able to make in our life, quality of life, and how it's allowed us to just be better people.
And that's what the goal is in life, isn't it?
Yeah.
To be happy, have peace of mind, just be better people.
That's all for this segment of Faces of Cannabis. Thank you again for tuning in, and stay tuned for the next episode to hear more stories from the everyday people in our cannabis community. Want to share your cannabis story? Drop us a DM via social media or email us at thecannatable@gmail.com. We would love to hear from you. And now, a word from our sponsors.
We want people to understand the product, and to understand it, you have to understand the effect. So the beautiful thing about Oxyr is because it's a nanotized solution, you get that more immediate onset, right? So when you're ingesting and you're trying, the flavors are great, the effect is fantastic, but the impact of the effect hitting you right away will then allow you to dose correctly. So the beautiful thing about Oxyr is it has been formulated and blended to give you with the nanotized that onset, but also tastes very, very good. We can't say exactly what the flavors are going to be, but think citrus, think melons, think, really just something that you would want to go to the refrigerator and have a light, like a fruit or something like that, in that category, right? So it's going to be pleasant, it's going to be enjoyable. That's all I got to say.
So,
All right.
what was
So-
your favorite bit today?
My favorite part about the day was probably just being able to gather at the table and have an intelligent conversation about cannabis without feeling weird and like, oh my gosh, like, hope the neighbors aren't listening. Yeah. Honestly, I mean, it's so refreshing to finally be at a time where we can create our own table and invite who we want to come to the table and sit with us,
And we have a lot of people to get to our table, I think.
I think so.
Yeah, we have a lot of interest in cannabis from, as we talked about today, the elderly. If you're interested in starting microdosing, if you're new to cannabis in any way, shape, or form, or if you just like a little bit more information about it.
Yeah, if you're a veteran or you're anyone who's suffering from any type of PTSD, consider the fact that cannabis is helping a lot of people, and so find someone to help you. Also consider the transition as well.
Well, we've got lots of places around to help. I think if you want to talk to Tikun, you can give him a bell. There's even
Tikun is always available, and remember, like we said, Tikun is literally like the medical grade standard of cannabis. I mean, I've been to their grow facility. You've been to their grow facility?
I have not.
Oh,
I have not.
honey,
But we
you
have
need
their
to go.
products at the shop, so
Yes, Shangri-La.
Yeah,
You gotta
so
go.
you gotta come find your Shangri-La with us. We can help you on your Tikun and your cannabis journey. Very excited about it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Next time
And a big thank you to everyone who's really helped us out. We really appreciate
Flow
it.
Distro, Oxyr. What can we say?
Shangri-La, thank you so much for all your little gifts and just really supporting this.
Thank you again for joining us, friends. We hope that you'll come back again. We hope that you'll share this video with your friends and your family. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and hit the notification button. That way you'll know when the next episode is coming on. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at the CannaTable.
Come join us.
Come and join us.